right, g'day, and welcome to the Concrete Connection Project podcast, episode 5, down, creating and performing on every single street of the Adelaide CBD, raising money and awareness for mental health and mental health charities that support people that are struggling. I'm down on Gilbert Street in the Fretco building, in which also houses what was the Guitar Academy and still is.
Yeah, kind of. Full version of.
We'll get into that in a second, but I'm here with good mate, Cal Williams Jr. Cal, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Benno, how you doing then? Thank you for inviting me.
No worries. Now, I worked in this building for many years alongside you. Perhaps maybe even about 5 years, I reckon. I was teaching out of here and working for the Guitar Academy with yourself, and something that we'd never actually talked about was mental health. And we were just grabbing a coffee before, and you said something that I think was pretty profound, and that was, mental health is a part of you, but it doesn't define who you are. What are your thoughts on just the words mental health?
It's amazing nowadays how it's sort of there's more awareness about mental health, and it's actually a proper focus on things as well, which is great. I think it's actually an excellent thing, and people are more willing to talk about it and sort of share their journeys and stuff. So but I think mental health is just I was watching some of the other podcasts you've done, saying that it's just as important as physical health as well, and it's something you have to really focus on, and just part of your human journey, I think.
I think it's something that needs to be as celebrated as people are celebrating their physical health. We've talked about it before on the podcast that nearly every second person is out there wearing activewear, promoting that they're working on their physical health. But I think people working on their mental health needs to be celebrated as well.
Yeah, definitely. And there is things you can actually do. Like, I think with mental health, there's always this sort of stigma where you had something, it was, there was nothing you could do about it, I suppose, in a way. But it's like physical health in terms of there are things you can, strategies you can have to sort of help your mental health.
It was something I've definitely discovered in this journey and talking to people. It is like a muscle, and it does need to be exercised. It's a bit like a garden. You got to weed it, and then 2 weeks later the weeds come up again. It's something that continuously does take work.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of, as I said, there are strategies I sort of come across as we go through the podcast. I'm sure I'll give you some of the background stories of some of them, but it is, and it's a lifelong journey, and it's something you really need to sort of focus on, because it's just part of being healthy in general, I think so.
Now, we were working here alongside each other, teaching. Out of 3 of these rooms were operational right before something happened in 2020 when COVID hit and the whole school was brought to a halt, a standstill. How was that for you? And then, what sort of things did you do to help navigate that period?
That was a crazy time. Yeah, it wasn't really brought to a standstill. It's almost brought to a complete shutdown, basically. And so all the teachers had to clear out. There's no room for teaching anymore, because people couldn't be in close contact. So so it was an interesting time, and so the whole school was 3 rooms in this building, and then we basically had to just shut down everything and move into one room. So we didn't actually seal it up. We actually had to sort of move everything to this one room. So I basically had tables and chairs and all stacked to the ceiling, and all the guitars and everything that was in the whole school in one room. So I'm sitting here in the middle of this whole empire that had just fallen down. And I used to get beers from the Gilbert Street Hotel, where they used to have a little hatchway. You couldn't actually go in there, obviously, and you'd buy a beer, and I'd be sitting here in my little empire, wondering, like what to do next, I suppose. And I think being I had this sort of thing where being a professional musician, I thought, well, maybe that wasn't the greatest life choice. It's we sort of, you work around it, it's sort of, so I went teaching online, and that was a sort of fascinating thing. And I didn't mind that, because you're sort of, when you were teaching students, you got to see a bit more about their lives. So when you teach generally, you just see them as they turn up. But with online, you got to see sort of the background and the dogs and the family and so there's a nice connection with that as well. But yeah, but it just sort of showed that you could be a professional musician and actually still survive. In fact, some of the students I had who were like airline pilots and jobs where you'd think would be a job for life, they were really struggling. There was one of the pilots I taught was actually had to train as a plumber during that time because he had no other work, because there was obviously nothing flying. So, yeah, no, it was an interesting time. A little bit, I don't know, in a way, it was sort of a bit of relief in the sense that I probably taken on too much managing the school as well. So it was actually, even though it was really sad to see it all go down, it was in a way it was sort of a relief in terms of the less pressure, I suppose, on my brain.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, first instances is like, everything that I've, all the eggs I put into a basket have all broken, have all come crumbling down. I remember having a similar feeling, packing up all my stuff from the teaching room, taking it home and trying to go online and trying to adapt and things like that as well. But I think you're right. It was also a bit of a forced cleanse and a forced chance to reevaluate and think, and it was something that I think Jimmy Bay was talking about, who we both know well. It was a chance to focus on the things that were important and that did really mean something, because I think, when you do have that routine and, you're just going through the paces of everyday life, and in our instance, it was teaching music, and it was, just a ritual that continued to roll on. But then when it got taken away, it was a chance, okay, well, what was important about that process for me? What did I like about it? And then what didn't I like, and what changes could we make?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And it was a sort of chance to sort of I think with the playing side of it as well, I got a lot more chance to sort of play and sort of practice more, and it was off the grid a bit, I don't know, a little bit. So, yeah, I think, it's different experiences, obviously, for different places. We were lucky in South Australia to kind of have a cleanse in a way. Probably in the other states, it's probably been a lot harder to sort of see any positive in it. But I think, there was definitely a restart for us anyway, I think. So,
I think we, living in South Australia, we were much luckier than some states. The lockdowns were much shorter, and I think our restrictions, were a little bit easier than definitely, some of the other states in Australia. Now, as well as being a musician that plays quite regularly and teaches and writes many, many, many books as well, you've actually started dabbling in golf.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's actually part of the mental health journey as well, which is something I would never have thought I had the sort of the mindset for. But, it's kind of like, I don't know, that was a COVID thing as well. I sort of had some time to sort of do some sport and just look at the physical side of physical health a bit as well, which is good. Being a musician, you're doing long, late hours, and you don't eat very healthy either, because Cafe de Billy's a 24-hour bakery or something, and not getting that much sleep and things like that. So I thought, well, it's kind of good to concentrate on a bit of exercise as well, and even teaching is fairly sedentary as well. So. But it's kind of a bit like meditation, though, in a weird sort of way. Like we were talking about mental health. It's part of my journey was there's a whole story on that one. But I did meditation for about 3 or 4 years, Buddhist meditation, and that really helped. And that was really helped calm my brain down. So I might sound a bit fast now, but I was a lot worse a few years ago. And so this has kind of taken a bit of like an extra meditative step. So I just go around the golf course with the coffee and clubs and just it's just quiet and you're by yourself and you can sort of it's and you can work through stuff. So it's like a physical meditation, walking meditation, I suppose, in a way. So I don't really play with anybody else, but it's I really enjoy it. And as I'm sort of and the interesting thing is with golf as well is that like with music, the more you practice, the better you get. So I'm actually getting quite good now because I play quite a lot more for the meditation than anything else. I'm not necessarily want to be a great golfer, but it's a kind of a side effect of playing for your mental health in a way. So.
Well, I mean, there's there's great mental health benefits to just being outside. I think.
Oh yeah.
So that's one thing I think a lot of musicians don't get, and that's probably natural sunlight as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and it's also really it's an obscure sport as well, because you can really dress weird. You can kind of be individual in that sense, and it's so far removed from what I do as a job, playing music and having to socialize with people a lot as well. I mean, in a way, I started off doing classical guitar. That was my first thing into music, and I still kind of got that nerd in me, and so I do quite like sort of quietness and so that sort of the golf is a totally different way of you don't have to interact with people, I suppose, and there's nothing to do with music. It's completely you're wearing a polo shirt. I mean, I never wear polo shirts, so it's so far removed from my usual lifestyle. It's kind of a break from yourself in a kind of weird sort of way. So
I definitely can love that, and definitely agree with that. And I think sometimes I talked about this with Jimmy Bay actually. Have you seen the Western Stars Springsteen show?
No, but I saw that. I heard the reference. I'm going to look it up.
But I mean, I think there's, and I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but he talks about the one side that wants the community, wants the social interaction of your families and the communities that are around you in your town or in your city, or even in schools and things like that. But there's also this pull to be alone and to be seldom, and to remove yourself from those things, and it's the push and pull and finding that balance. And I think I can definitely understand that golf for you is probably not something that you get round with all the, get a gang together and go out and have a hit and have a chat. It's more about going out by yourself and having a hit and trying to get silent, trying to get quiet with yourself, rather than always being around crowds of people and full pubs and things like that.
Totally. And it is a really good chance to sort of work through some stuff, and you might see me wandering around the north course at Adelaide, and you can sort of, I don't know, chat to yourself and work things out. It must be kind of crazy from the outside, but that's the sort of the eternal struggle of a musician, though, is that you have to be introverted enough to create music, and then be extroverted enough to go out and play it. And that's such a lot of people struggle with that. Most people struggle with that because it's a real push-pull, as you said, like between the two sides. So every musician, I think, has to be kind of introverted. And that's kind of where I suppose the golf comes in. When I actually mention I play golf, by the way, people never believe it because I don't look like a golfer in any stretch of the imagination. But that's kind of part of it. It's something that isn't me, it's different.
Well, I can sort of see the similarity into what I'm doing at the moment, because some days I'll go out there and, the whole part of this project is to meet people on the street and to tell them about the project and tell them what we're trying to achieve and tell them, that we're trying to get conversations open. But the other part of it is a real therapy for me when no one's around, because I'm just there with all my gear. Sometimes I just like sitting by myself and playing music to myself.
Totally.
But it's that push-pull. And then I suddenly think, actually, my purpose out here is to meet people and start these conversations. But there's the other part of me is like, I find actually this quite therapeutic, going out by myself, playing on random streets and people thinking, what the hell are you doing?
Definitely. No, it's and I think what you're doing with this as well is fantastic. I mean, I was watching the podcast you've done before. It's essential really for people to sort of see that these confident performers like Jimmy Bay and people like that. There are there's a world behind that that people don't see very often. They see the confidence and the stage persona and things like that, but guaranteed there's a lot going on behind all that for them to get up on stage in the first place. Really, so I like that, how you were saying, a musician sort of needs to be introverted enough to be able to sit and create, but then extroverted enough to be that person on stage. And I find, that's I find myself to be a bit of an introvert to do all that stuff. And then when I'm on stage, to be extroverted enough. But I always found it hard to come off stage because people generally want to talk to you then. And then that's the part I found, one of the hardest, because then you've got to talk to people. Then I think musicians also carry a lot of self-doubt, or sometimes they carry a
a lack of feeling of achievement sometimes. Sometimes I'll get on stage and I'll play and it's gone really well. Then all I want to do is retract again.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my favorite part of music, I think, is this room's lovely, and I've got the waiting room down there. But I just love being by myself with a coffee and a guitar and just writing songs. I think it's probably my favorite part of music, I suppose. And the performance side, I enjoy that as well, but it's definitely not integral to what I do. I just love the quietness. So,
And we did sort of mention it before. We mentioned that. What did we mention? I'm just trying to remember. But anyway, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
But So I sort of put you in a similar pocket to Jimmy Bay, in that you were you were constantly working in venues. You're doing lots of gigs, just like Jimmy. Every second post of yours, today I'm playing here, today I'm playing there. You're playing at a lot of venues all the time. So do you feel like you burn out, or do you feel like you're sort of on top of it? You've got the gigs that you like, and you sort of keep them in circulation, or how do you feel?
It's a balance, I think. I didn't really burn out as such. I mean, I love music and I love playing music, and I think it's the gift that we have, I think, is that it's we've got in touch with a very healing form of therapy in a way, in a kind of weird sort of way. Music, I find that if I'm playing a gig and I'm feeling under the weather or a headache or something like that, as soon as I start playing, it just goes. I think it's always been really a healing thing for me. So. And there's definitely a stage, especially with the Jimmy Bay. I related to that quite a lot because we were on the same circuit doing, probably the same workload, and it was a lot of gigs. Not so much like burnout, but I think I enjoy it a lot. But you do have to balance it with rest and things like that, and making sure you try and stay healthy as well. Otherwise, you will burn out. And as Jimmy was pointing out, you have got that whole thing of the alcohol and the late night sort of thing, and early days of Memphis Slims and all those type of venues. You're getting home at 4 or 5 in the morning, or sleeping in the combi, or just really that isn't sustainable. I think the music side is always sustainable, but it's the peripheral that you got to be careful about, because that is can lead you down a path that isn't healthy. So.
Well, that's the thing with being a musician. It's there's no uniform. I know some bands wear a uniform. There's no uniform. Yeah. There's no real regulation on drinking on the job. There's I know. And other things too. But, having an awareness of that and just knowing how to balance that can be quite tricky. Now, I do remember what I was going to say now. We were talking about, I was sent a paper on the mental health of musicians, and the mental health of a musician hobbyist. Music is very, very beneficial to someone that does music as a hobby, without the pressures of trying to make an income. But the mental health of musicians trying to make a career it can be far below that. Do you agree with that?
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, no, I'd love to see that article. Yeah, no, it's totally like that. I mean, I teach amateur musicians, and it's part of the life, but isn't their whole life. So hobbyists and professional musicians, there's a world of difference between that, because I mean, the professional musician, this is your living, and you sort of have to balance so many different hats. There's the booking of the gigs and the sort of or the promotion and obviously the playing of the gig, and then the invoicing. There's a whole thing around it that hobbyists don't have to worry about. So and it is work. That's the other thing as well, is that people kind of think that playing music is kind of a not work. Sometimes it's harder work, some other jobs that you've got, it's because you're independent and you're self-employed, and that in itself is there's a lot of worries about that, because it's not a guaranteed paycheck. I used to have this thing where I wanted to be my dream job would be a trolley stacker, Woolworths. What a great job. Basically go around the car park and there's a trolley over there, there's a trolley over there, and you get paid at the end of the week. But I mean, I couldn't do it because I'd get bored too quickly. My attention span is limited, but I like that idea. It's sort of just something that's so easy. in that sort of sense.
Yeah, you really need to skill stack as as an artist,
Yeah.
and not just as a musician. Even if you've got a small business, I think you've got to do graphic design. You've got to be good on socials. You got to know how to invoice correctly. Chase up invoices. Sometimes, you've got more waiting incoming, even though you've done all this work. There's a lot of different pressures. I definitely agreed with a lot in that article because, when you are a hobbyist, and, we both teach ukulele and do a lot of ukulele workshops, a lot of people are in it for the community as well, and then their whole life around their music is to pick up the ukulele and head to a group and hang out with friends and play music, and then it sort of ends. Or will they go home and then they practice their music, and then it's all for this sense to then come together in sense of a community. But then, as a professional musician, sometimes you go out and do your gig, but then you're alone again, and then you're, worrying about money and worrying about invoices. And that's not just to say it's just with musicians. As I said, it's with other artists and, small business owners as well. I remember, talking to an arborist who owned a tree, trimming business. And then it was quite a large business as well. And then he said, at any one time, he's owed, around 50 grand, and he's got to pay employees and things like that. So the pressures of all those other skills that you need to learn, on top of just doing your job as well, I think is quite a fair bit of pressure.
It totally is. And then, as you said before, it's that kind of having to have that sense of self-worth, and confidence in yourself that, you're worth the thing as well. And also, then you're dealing also with things like cliques as well that you have to kind of negotiate around, and that, that some venues, may have a clique around it. And so there's a lot more to it. I think the actually easiest part is actually the playing the gig, that's, for me is probably the most, or definitely is the most enjoyable part. But the other stuff have to be there to support that performance. Totally agree with all that. So, where are you at now in terms of, managing your mental health? Yeah, no, well, it's good. I mean, I said I'd had that. So what it was basically, I remember writing these books behind me, and I was sort of writing it at a very frantic pace, and I kind of knew I was burning myself out with that more so than gigs. And I had this drive to get this school and these books out, but it was kind of unhealthy sort of pace, I think. Anyway, so I went to a Music SA had this mental health in music, and I thought, well, I'll go along to that. I'm probably fine, but I'll just check. And then went to they had the psychologist there, a lady called Sharon, who's a musician herself, and so I spoke to her after the seminar type thing. I said, and talking a million miles an hour, I said, I'm not sure if it's if there's anything wrong with me, but I keep doing these books, and I think I'm okay doing these gigs. And and she goes, yeah, see me on Monday. And so I kind of realized then that I was actually going way too fast and pushing myself too fast. And and so from that I sort of then looked at. The great thing about nowadays, you have a lot of apps that you can look at on the phone. Like, so Headspace was my first one that I went to, and that was really nice. And Calm as well. And so from that, there's a Buddhist monk on Headspace. And so from there, I thought, well, I wouldn't mind seeing, going to the real thing. So then I found this Buddhist place. There's a lady called Luma who actually wrote an album named after. And that was a big game changer for me. It gave me the space to sort of sit back and realize that, because I always thought meditation was you were sitting with your thoughts, and I always thought, why would I want to do that? Because it's spending time with yourself, But I actually realised that with meditation, that it isn't about that. It's actually stepping back and being able to look at your thoughts, and as like a river, I suppose, or a road, and being able to not be involved in the thoughts, and also the fact that that the life was perception, in the sense that how you viewed things was kind of how things are in a sense. So, for example, like fear of flying or fear of spiders, it's not the spider or the flying that's the problem. It's your perception of flying, which is why some people can love to fly and people love spiders. It's not the thing. It's how you relate to that thing. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson for me. So I did that for about 4 years. I still meditate now, but I don't sort of go as much to this formal sort of class. But it was that was really good, and it sort of just really helped me calm down. And sort of, so I still write books, not on the mad pace, that was. I mean, now it's funny because it's been done, and I can sort of tweak, and I enjoy it. I mean, I love writing books, and I love working out systems, and I find the guitar such a fascinating instrument. It's a perfect instrument in the way it works, and I love teaching and things like that. But I definitely don't. I take time out for myself now, which is I never used to. So the golf would never have been the thing. I would have thought, well, this is a waste of time. I should be writing more books. So it sort of showed that I just needed that break, and just to bring things back a bit and realize you didn't have to. I mean, I've written about probably 50 books, maybe a little bit more, and that's a pretty. It's probably more actually. It's probably about 70, but 50 published, and we got published in America, which was good. So there were sort of positives that came out of that period of time, but it's something I wouldn't ever want to revisit. Again, I'm happier now being playing music and.
Well, I can definitely see some similarities with me about this project because there's this. I think that the main thing is internal pressure. It's not external because, with this project,
totally.
I'm like, I've got to post now. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And then it's like, well, hold on. I created the project. It's my project. I set the pace. No one's asking me to do any of this stuff, but I feel like, I've got to keep doing this. I've got to post now. And just these pressures of, what people say you should do, get 10 YouTube clips up a day, do 20 reels, how's your TikTok looking, all this sort of stuff. And then like all these pressures, but no one's asking me for that. It's this pressure that I'm putting on myself that I have to do it. And then, I've got to definitely pull back and say, well, hold on. I'm setting the pace here. Doesn't matter if it goes a little bit slower. And, I think maybe something similar was happening with you. It's like, totally. I've got to get these books done. And totally. It's like, but, I've got 30 books here for sale. How many books do people need? But I think, it's just something that we can create in our own minds. I need to keep doing this. But, it's good in a sense to have drive, but also, taking that time back to, take a look at the things that are important. Sometimes a snail's pace is better than, a cheetah's or, I don't know. So
yes, totally.
You'll get to the same place eventually, but, maybe you won't burn out.
Exactly. And I think since I've known you, we've always had that similarity in terms of that internal drive to accomplish. And as I said, it's not a negative thing. It's just something that needs to be a little bit, controlled in a way. Because we have got natural urge to sort of create more, but I also think I was thinking about this morning. I noticed with the other podcasts you were saying about that mask coming down in the plane thing, how you have to fix your own mask before you fix other people's. But in a kind of weird sort of way, what you're doing is actually kind of the opposite of that. You're actually you're helping other people fix their masks. And that actually helps you fix yours, because the more you help out other people, the more these other people will actually probably help out you. So it's actually not really about you actually fixing your own mask. It's actually, this is really good for sort of bringing awareness to people about this issue as well, and especially with musicians as well. And this is good for you. So you actually, this whole thing's going to be beneficial, but also the fact that you have this whole body of work. Like you do. That's the sort of the payoff in a weird sort of way, like this. You'll have a whole bunch of these, really important videos from a variety of people's viewpoints, and that helps people. It helps people. Watching Jimmy Bay, for me was actually really good, because you think, well, actually, that's kind of how I think as well, and being similar in terms of our workload as well. That there is that danger of burning out, and so I think what you're doing is excellent with this.
Well, thank you. I find that doing this, I know my followership right now is tiny. I took a step back from performing, and took a step back from bands that I'd helped create, and then started again at zero. So I am appreciative to the followership I have, that's for sure. But it is small. But I know people get caught up with views and likes and stuff, but if some of these podcast videos, they've got like 50 views already, and I'm like, that makes me really proud, because starting from zero, I think on YouTube there's like 17 subscribers or something like that. But so please subscribe, of course. But to get these 50 views, and and then a lot of them are for the whole duration of the podcast too. So I'm pretty proud of that. And then a part of the journey as well is archival. As you said, it's going to be a nice body of work for me to look back at the end. But it's like, I'm creating this for my own personal legacy, my own personal archives to be able to see, oh, this is a great period of time when I was, actively trying to achieve something.
Yeah, no, it's excellent, and that's it. And it does really help people see inside it and realize that actually we're all in the same boat together. It's not like it's you're bringing awareness to it, which is fantastic. But
I liked how you had your own take on something that I've been saying in a couple of the podcasts, and that's what about it. A nice conversation is about. It's challenging, and then learning and seeing things from other perspectives. I think is great for mental health too. To see something one way, and then I see that, but it's also a bit like this. So challenging in a nice, comfortable conversation.
It is, no, it's excellent, and that's it. And it's a really, I think, for people to hear the inside of, because you'll never get this, like you couldn't really have a conversation with, and this is the start of it. This is going to get more and more as we go along. But using just Jimmy Bay as an example, because that's the main one I sort of could relate to immediately. You'll never get that conversation with Jimmy Bay, unless you had a few whiskeys at Nola or something. But you're getting an inside, in-depth study of people, that you'll see up around town. You'll see me playing at gigs, and I might not be able to sort of go into more detail about this, but you're sort of getting an insight from this sort of format.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to then, suddenly jump into a half an hour long conversation about someone's mental health when they've just played a concert sort of thing.
Totally. Yeah, it may not work. So if you do want to talk to me after the gig, I might not be able to talk to you as much. So. I'll be playing golf. So,
so one thing which I think was great about the school when we were working here. We did, I think there was a good sense of community within the walls of this building, because, I'd have relationships with your students, you'd have relationships with mine, would pop into each other's classrooms. Oh, how you going, Steve? Or, Mary, whoever it was, would be able to, there was a sense of community, and would have the student jam night down the road, and which all the students would come together and then perform. I think there was a great sense of community around, and something that people have talked about quite a lot, is having that purpose and that community around you. Do you find, there's still a bit of a community? Do you get that from teaching and with your students?
Not so much. You're right. There was a really good time, and a lot of friendships were made in that period of time as well, with students as well. I think with students, it's sort of, it's an interesting thing. I do love teaching, and I've I've always loved teaching from even when I was getting lessons myself when I was a kid and stuff. But it's been natural for me to teach. But but you never really, I don't know, you kind of make friends with the students, but it is only for that period of time, and you don't really see them out or anything like that. So whereas I think the Guitar Academy was unique in that sense that we did build a community and very supportive on live performance, and people used to come to the pub, and it was great. It was a really good time. I really enjoyed that time, I think, definitely. But I think there was a lot of pressure to keep it maintained and to manage it. And I don't think I'm really naturally a manager. Like, I don't think I'm tough enough to be a manager. I think you got to be a bit more of a ball breaker, I think, to be able to sort of manage, people and stuff like that. And I never people managed before either. So in a way, it's sort of, I quite like going back to just being, relating to people and other musicians that were working here as well. As just a musician to musician now. It's not like a boss to musician, or, I didn't have to do any hard calls or anyone. So, but I think, the best thing that came out from that was those jam nights. And people still talk about those jam nights as well, because, they were very supportive. So.
So one thing I'd sort of like to ask, because I don't think there's a full, there's not a one-stop shop for a solution for people's mental health. And just to finish up, because I'm out here trying to, fill up my tool belt as well as offer tools to, other people that might think they like it. But for you, have you got any tools that we can sort of use? Because sometimes you don't just need a hammer. Sometimes you need a screwdriver as well. And sometimes you need a saw, or, you need different tools for different jobs and different times in your life. Have you got any go-to tricks? I know we sort of talked about the golf, and we talked about some meditation as well. Any final words of how we could potentially help someone out there, even just in your own personal experience?
I think being more kind to yourself is probably a really important thing. I think we are stuck in this society where it's accomplishment based. We're always striving to be the best. And in the music sense as well, there's always that struggle. You're competing against people, and that's a really wearing thing to do. So I think just being kind to yourself and actually just taking time out for yourself, whether it be meditation or golf or anything that works for you, really. I think being healthy is so important, whether physically or mentally. But yeah, just giving yourself a break. I think not feeling that you need to. Do it all in one go, I suppose. There's so that I can still accomplish. I love accomplishing things. But I definitely
small steps.
And I definitely don't. It's not built on my whole personality that that it's that I have to do it now. I don't know. But I think just taking time out for yourself, I think, is probably really important. And just enjoying things. I mean, I never used to look at trees or I don't know, really notice things. It's just they were just a background to whatever I was doing. Writing books or writing albums, or it was just kind of peripheral. Whereas now I can actually walk around, and do a walk in the bush or whatever, and actually notice things. Sunsets and other things that probably normal people. I say normal people, but people have mentioned to me that are amazing. I never really saw it because I was in my own head a lot. Always working out songs or things or books or whatever. So
probably it comes from that internal pressure. So I think some definite things that I've taken away is, don't be kind to yourself, and then that goes hand in hand with, reduce that pressure. It's you that's setting the pace. Being self-aware, and also being present, because if you're always looking for the next thing, you can't appreciate the thing that's happening right now.
Yes, exactly. And also I think having experiencing like anxiety and things like that, I've always had this kind of high resting anxiety, what they call, and so basically you're higher than like a generalized anxiety. I've always had that sort of thing, and so having that, I can be a lot more empathetic to other people, and I never really. That was always a side effect. A good one of that is that at certain situations where I can see people who are anxious and maybe struggling a bit, I can sort of relate to it in a way. Sort of, I can sort of help or try and help a little bit. Whereas before, when I wasn't aware that I kind of had that, I probably wouldn't. I'd been too focused on my own thing. So I think it's actually empathy and helping out other people really helps you out as well, which is all part of it. So.
Well, thank you so much, Cal. Yeah, that was great, and I think our longest podcast yet. I reckon we can definitely come and do a follow up and get you out on the street playing a few tunes at some time.
Definitely keen.
But loved it. Yeah, got a lot out of that, and let's share it round. Thank you so much, Cal.
Thank you.